everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Oral questions. Questions orales. L'honorable
The honourable member.
Thornhill.
$100 million Liberal scandal has paralyzed Parliament for a week. Mr. Speaker, you yourself ruled that the NDP Liberals have violated a House order to turn over evidence to the police for a criminal investigation into their corruption. They are defying your ruling, and they have grinded this place to a halt. The auditor said that there's $400 million tax dollars and 186 conflicts of interest in questions. Canadians can get accountability today if they hand over the documents to the police. So what's in those documents, and how bad is it?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I want to start by noting the events in Vancouver yesterday at a protest. We unequivocally condemn those events and those actions. It is absolutely unacceptable to burn the Canadian flag and to chant "Death to Canada." It is also unacceptable to deny and celebrate the events of October 7th and to champion the acts of a terrorist group. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Glad that they found the courage to condemn something in this House, but whatever is in those documents, back to the matter at hand that I asked about, must be really bad if they're willing to hide the corruption. Months ago, the Auditor General found that the Liberal appointees gave nearly $400 million tax dollars to their own companies, 186 conflict of interest. I'll ask again for the 7th day in a row, will the NDP Liberals end the cover-up, give proof to the police so we can get accountability for the corruption and get Parliament back to work?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important I read your ruling into the record because the Conservatives didn't hear it the first time. The Chair, that's you, Mr. Speaker, is of the view that it would be valuable to afford an opportunity for the concerns expressed by the RCMP as well as by the Auditor General to be addressed fully, and I would hope for a mutually satisfactory solution to be arrived at. I believe the best way for this to be achieved would be to follow the usual course for a prima facie question of privilege, that is a referral to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. We're ready to send this matter to committee. When will the Conservatives do that?
Just going to ask all members, please, not to take the floor unless they've been recognized by the Chair. The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the House Leader missed the part where you told them that they're holding this House in contempt. If there is nothing to hide in those documents, then they should be able to hand them over. $400 million to Liberal friends, 186 conflicts of interest from a government that knows really well what a conflict of interest is, all while a record number of Canadians can't afford to eat. How bad are these documents that they would hold this place up for 7 days, defying your order, and to hide the $400 million that they gave to their friends?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're ready for this matter to move on to the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, just as you ruled. The only party that doesn't want that to happen are the Conservatives. They're trying to spin out of their own obstruction because they don't want this to go to committee, because what they will hear is expert after expert talking about the egregious abuse of power that the Conservatives are trying to do in this place to override the rights of Canadians. We're ready to move forward, Mr. Speaker. It's only the Conservatives that are afraid of a vote. Thank you.
The Liberal government is violating a parliamentary order to hand over evidence to the RCMP. At issue is the Auditor General's findings that officials at SDTC broke conflict of interest laws 186 times and funneled $400 million of taxpayers' money into their own companies. All this at a time when Canadians can barely afford to eat or heat and house themselves. Now, by refusing to accept your ruling, they have effectively paralyzed Parliament, pushing aside all other work to address the housing crisis, the inflation crisis, and the crime crisis this government unleashed. Why not end the cover-up, hold the lawbreakers to account, and let Parliament get back to work?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
False, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that member sat in your chair at one point, and I think he would have an interesting perspective if the opposition was not following his ruling as he is doing. I quote, and I repeat, What you said, Mr. Speaker, is I believe the best way for this to be achieved would be to follow the usual course of a prima facie question of privilege, that is, a referral to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. The government is willing to do that. We're willing to vote in favour of it. The only party that is holding Parliament up are the Conservatives because they don't want the truth out there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And ask the honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's, please, not to take the floor unless recognised. Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Look, this is a case of $400 million and 186 conflicts of interest that are benefiting Liberal insiders lining their pockets while Canadians are lined up at food banks. The response from the government to a parliamentary order to produce the documents is, first of all, to break the order so that they can bury it at committee, while Conservatives want to make sure that this corruption, this scandal, sees the full daylight that it's deserved, and a referral to Canada's Royal Canadian Mounted Police so they can decide to take a criminal investigation. Oh wait, we've learned that they are already investigating the latest corruption with these Liberals. Will they turn over the documents today?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, your ruling was very clear. Send this to committee. There's only one group of MPs that are afraid of that going to committee, and we are prepared to vote on that, Mr. Speaker. Let's send it to committee. Let's have that debate. The only group of MPs that are obstructing their own obstruction, because they don't actually want to help Canadians. All they want to do is serve themselves and their own partisan interests. Mr. Speaker, let's get this out of the House. Let's get it to committee so that we can get back to the important work of serving Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
She says she wants to get it out of the House. She wants to get it out of the sunlight, the daylight. They want to bury it at committee. They don't want Canadians to know about the latest example of Liberal corruption. We see that conflicts of interest are very common over there. That Prime Minister broke the law twice. The Public Safety Minister broke the law. The Trade Minister broke the law. The Liberal appointed chair of this Green Slush Fund broke the law. Every time these Liberals get a chance, they enrich their friends. They want to hide it from Canadians. Conservatives want to get the truth. We want to get accountability. And we want Parliament to be able to get back to work for Canadians. Will they turn over the documents today?
Order. The honourable member from the Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We already have the bloc, but now we learn we have the blocker-in-chief, the Conservative, Mr. Speaker. How ridiculous for Canadians watching at home. They are blocking their own motion, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine that? The Conservative are blocking their own motion. Mr. Speaker, we know the Conservative know how to count to 6, so let me explain to them. There's not been 1 report. There's not been 2 reports. There's not been 3 reports. There's been 4 independent reports, Mr. Speaker, to go to the bottom of this, Mr. Speaker. We got to the bottom of this. Let's get back to work and expect better from all of us.
There is so much Liberal corruption that they're covering up their cover-up of the $400 million corruption of the Liberal Green Slush Fund. The Speaker ruled that the NDP Liberals violated a House order to turn the Green Slush Fund documents over to the RCMP for investigation. How much worse is the corruption that the NDP Liberals are refusing to respect the order of the Speaker, pushing aside all the work of doubling the housing costs that the Liberals have done, inflation and crime? We can get back to the business of this House if the NDP Liberals just end the cover-up and turn the documents over to the ICMP. Why won't they?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, if we're going to be mansplained to, they can at least try and get it right. But the fact of the matter is that you ruled very clearly that this matter should go to the House committee. If the members opposite would like to read your full ruling, they can go do that, or I can table it in the House for them to read. But I would encourage them to not just cherry pick parts of your ruling, but to actually follow it as opposed to what they're doing. We're happy for this matter to move on, for it to go to committee, for it to be studied. It's only the Conservatives that are holding this place up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Every time I meet with a Liberal, I have to check for my wallet. And they just took $400 million of taxpayer money and funneled it to Liberals in the Green Slush Fund. Why are they ignoring an order of this House? Why are they preventing us from getting to the business of the House, since they won't turn over the documents to the RCMP? If the Prime Minister won't end the cover-up, we'll at least call a carbon tax election so Canadians can get the Green Slush Fund money back.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, every time I meet a Conservative, I have to search for some semblance of reason. When we talk about what's going on here, let's think about why your ruling said send it back to the committees, Mr. Speaker. Your ruling said that because this has never been done. Because you know what happens normally when you ask for documents in your law enforcement? You go to a court of law. You don't go into a partisan arena such as the House of Commons, because a court of law, a judge weighs things called charter interests, like your expectation of privacy, like your right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. Those are important considerations. We will stand by them every time.
The Honourable Member from Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, the latest $400 million scandal from this Liberal government has paralyzed Parliament. The Auditor General found 186 conflicts of interest, with close to $400 million handed out to corrupt Liberal insiders, all at a time when Canadians cannot afford to eat, heat, or house themselves. It begs the question, how damning is that evidence that they have grounded Parliament to a halt simply to hide the truth from Canadians?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I enjoy the interventions from the member opposite, but I also appreciate his experience as a former Crown prosecutor. He used to work closely with the police. And what he would recollect from his past career is that those police operate independently from him as a former Crown, and certainly independently from politicians. Why do they do that, Mr. Speaker? So that we can have confidence in our institutions in this country. You know who doesn't have confidence? People that live under authoritarian regimes. Instead of emulating authoritarianism, how about you join this side and learn how to fight against it?
Colleagues, please. I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Wellington Halton Hills please not to raise his voice when he is not recognised by the Chair. The Honourable Member. The Honourable Member from Brantford Brant.
Speaker, you ruled that the NDP Liberals violated a House order by withholding evidence regarding their $400 million scandal, effectively obstructing justice, to which the Minister of Justice should be aware of. Their refusal to respect your ruling has paralyzed Parliament, pushing aside all our work to address the doubling of housing costs, food inflation, and the rise in crime and chaos. The time to end the cover-up is now. When will they hand over the documents so that we can get accountability for corruption and get Parliament back to work?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, your ruling was clear to send this matter to committee for further study. The Conservatives don't like that because they'll hear from experts like the former law clerk who says, in my humble opinion, it is an abuse of the powers for this House to use its power to demand and get documents from the government in order to transfer them to a third party that wouldn't otherwise receive them, or to compel the government to give documents to a third party. Mr. Speaker, expert after expert will tell them this is wrong. We are here to stand up for the rights of Canadians every single day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. The latest revelation: 50 firefighters and 20 fire trucks were turned away from Jasper National Park just before the town burned. These brave firefighters were ready, willing, and able to fight these fires, but were ordered to stand down. So now the only question that remains is, would the minister categorize the results of his leadership in this as incompetence or negligence?
The Honourable Minister for Official Languages. Colleagues, the Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. And my honourable colleague has heard from the Minister for Parks Canada. That company in question was in the employ of the government of Alberta, and the matter was resolved. Mr. Speaker, I have been in regular contact with Mayor Ireland and his council, as have other members in this government, other ministers, other MPs. Mr. Speaker, we are working with Mayor Ireland, his council, and Jasperites every week to make sure that Jasper comes back better than ever before, because that's what Albertans and Canadians expect of us.
The honourable member from Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, 4 years ago, Parks Canada put out a tweet that said they would be installing a sprinkler system to protect the Jasper town site. Even the minister's own officials seem to know that water is better at stopping fires than is carbon tax, yet there is no indication that these sprinklers were ever installed, despite a tender notice being posted in 2021, 3 years before the devastating fire. Can the minister confirm how many permanent and mobile sprinklers were operational and deployed in Jasper to save homes and businesses? Just the number, please, even if it rhymes with zero.
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, instead of spreading disinformation and misinformation in this House, Mr. Speaker, I actually went to Jasper, and the sprinkler system has been installed by Parks Canada in collaboration with the work that we've been doing with the City of Jasper. I'd be happy to show him where it is in the city, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, it is so important for members to only take the floor, so not only that we can hear the questions and answers, and I'm also referring to the honourable member of Lakelands, please, if we only take the time when we have the microphone to speak so that we can all hear, especially people who require the use of translation. It's being respectful for our colleagues to making sure that they can hear the questions and they can hear the answers. The honourable member from King's Hants.
Speaker, Stephen Harper referred to Atlantic Canada, and I quote, a culture of defeat. When the Conservatives were in government,
the honourable member, colleagues. Colleagues, the more time that I'm spending up on my feet, the less time we have for questions. So I'm going to ask members, please. The honourable member from King's Hants from the top, please.
Speaker, Stephen Harper referred to Atlantic Canada as, I quote, a culture of defeat. When the Conservatives were in government, when they amended the Atlantic Accords, they put our region's interests in the back seat. Just ask Bill Casey. As it relates to Bill C-49, our government has worked with the government of Nova Scotia. We've worked with Newfoundland and Labrador because the legislation represents billions of economic opportunity. The Conservatives stood in the way every single time. Can the Minister of Housing provide an update to this House about why this bill matters for Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question and for his advocacy for the economy in Nova Scotia. There's a few reasons we got involved in politics. Creating good jobs at home and protecting the environment are among them. The behaviour of Conservative MPs from Nova Scotia, Newfoundland and Labrador in this file is absolutely ridiculous. You have to ask yourself why they oppose good jobs at home. I expect it's because it protects the environment too, and their leader has told them they're not allowed to talk about climate change unless it's to visit school kids and tell them carbon dioxide is just plant food, nothing to worry about. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is going to make a meaningful difference, create good paying jobs on the East Coast and protect our environment. I wish Atlantic MPs on the Conservative.
The honourable member from Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Yesterday, on October 7th, while burning the Maple Leaf, Sami Doon terrorist sympathizers openly called for death to Canada, death to the United States, and death to Israel. After 9 years of this Prime Minister sadly calls for death to Canada, and our allies have now been normalized. Sammy Doon operates as an arm of a listed terrorist organization in Canada. Will the Prime Minister protect Jewish Canadians from homegrown extremism and list Sammy Doon as a terrorist organization?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
If there's one thing today we will be able to agree is that we both condemn what happened yesterday on the streets of Vancouver talking about. And that's why we will always condemn any form of anti-Semitism. And I'm convinced that everybody in this House will condemn any form of anti-Semitism. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, new data reveals that 1 in 4 Canadians are forced into precarious gig work. And under the Liberals, the cost of living has exploded while wages have fallen behind. More than ever, workers need and deserve more power, protection, and pay. And joining a union is the best way to get that. So while Liberals continue to undermine unions and Conservatives want to tear them down, New Democrats will always be Canada's only Labour Party. So will this government support the NDP's plan for sectoral bargaining so that gig workers can benefit from a union card?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, whether it's sticking up for replacement workers, whether it's doubling the union training investment fund, Mr. Speaker, this is the most Labour-friendly government in the history of our country. We are union proud. We are union friendly. We're going to continue to make sure that we grow this economy from the bottom up and the middle out, and that means with good union workers.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Oh, yeah. Hey, gang, what do you think of that video? Please leave a comment. I love the comments. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. We watch the question periods daily live. We do a broadcast on that. Please come and check out the channel. I think that you would enjoy the chat room very much if you are interested in Canadian federal politics, learning with other people that are learning, that do have opinions. A lot of these people in the chat room know a lot already. Come join us, come check it out. That's it. These other videos are very wild. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, share, get notified for the live shows, all that fun stuff. Aaron, Canadian Looney. We'll catch you next video. Thank you very much for watching this one. Catch you next time.